Looking at some structures found in the thorax, we have the sternum here to start with. Now the sternum is this whole entire bone piece here. What you see is this is the cartilage that would be leading off towards the ribs. Now the sternum is broken into three different regions. We have this top part, which is going to be the manubrium. We have the body in the middle, and we have the xiphoid process here on the bottom. There are two landmarks to note, the clavicular notch and the jugular notch. If we move this down, this notch here and this notch here, those are both going to be the clavicular notches. The one right in the middle here, this is going to be the jugular notch. So clavicular notch, jugular notch, clavicular notch. When you start looking into the ribs, you'll notice that the ribs are broken up into true ribs, which are ribs 1 through 7, and then false ribs, which are 8 through 12. One of the defining features for the true ribs is the true ribs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 down here. The 7 different true ribs each have their own individual costal cartilage attachments. Ribs 8 through 12 are going to all either not have an anterior cartilage attachment or are sharing this cartilage attachment here. See, there are several that all share an attachment coming up. So the 7 ribs are all having their own individual, while ribs 8 through 12 do not have their own individual anterior cartilage attachments. If we're looking at the ribs themselves, here is one example of a rib. Here's another, another, another. The ribs all depend on location for their shape. Sometimes you'll have ribs that are this shape, more like ribs 1, or all the way down to rib 11 or 12. The ribs will change shape as you go from rib 1 through rib 12. When we're starting to look at the different structures, the different landmarks, you're going to have the head of the rib, which is right here. You will then have the neck, which is following it. You end up with the tubercle, which is this bump right here. Then you have the shaft, which is the rest of the rib. So you have your head, neck, tubercle, and then shaft. The intercostal space would just be what's between the two ribs. It's a space in between the ribs. To look a little further into the rib cage, you can see we have an intact rib cage here. You'll notice that the ribs are all coming and attaching through this cartilage in front. But as you get down here, you'll notice that the false ribs, rib number 12 all the way down here, 11, you can see right here, 10, 9, 8, they all either share this common anterior cartilage or have no cartilage at all. The true ribs, ribs 1 through 7, are the ones that have the individual cartilage attachments. And in reference to the size I was talking about, you can see that rib 1 up top here is a little bit flatter and smaller, where if we've shifted down a little bit now, you can see they get larger as the rib cage expands, but then towards the bottom, they're again getting smaller because now they're not even having the anterior attachment points. One other bone to note that a lot of times you can kind of overlook because it's on the smaller side is if I shift this down, you can notice right here, this is the hyoid bone. A lot of times the hyoid bone is hidden below the jaw. So if the skull was in place, you wouldn't be able to see the hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is kept in place and held in place all by muscular attachments. When we have our skull intact, you can't see the hyoid bone because it's under the chin. It's deep under here. But if we take the skull and remove it, now there's the hyoid bone. You can see the hyoid bone is found deep to where the mandible would be. Put it back in place, the hyoid bone is underneath. So that hyoid bone is really only visible when you have the mandible removed or you're looking from an inferior view up under the chin.